Okay, so this was one of the biggest battles I've ever had to date in Master of Orion. It was one of the early battles in my war on the Meklan as the Roshan. And I'm starting to push into the lower reaches of their territory, only like two systems away from their homeworld. I had actually previously broken through to their homeworld, bombed it, and then I saw they were making a fleet closer to our border, so I pulled my task force back. A few of the ships in the task force hadn't been upgraded. Let's see, one of them is, I've got one Titan 9 compared to the two Titan 13s, and that's going to have a lot less efficient weaponry. But as you can see, the Meklar have an absolutely crazy number of frigates and destroyers. I think that works out to, yeah, about 20 destroyers and more than 30 frigates. And then a couple cruisers, a battleship, and 4 Titans. To my 3 Titans, 3 battleships, 1 cruiser, and Doomstar. Now, immediately in this battle, what I didn't want to happen is to lose my cruiser and stuff too quickly, because you're just losing firepower. You really want to try and keep your ships in it for as long as possible. Unfortunately, I lost two battleships and a cruiser quite quickly, and then the other 2 Titans as well. At first I thought the optimal strategy would be to just rush in and kill their Titans, but I realized I was going to get encircled by the destroyers and frigates way before that happened, and then they can just pick off your outer ships, which in this case would have been my battleships and my cruiser, and then it's going to be a lot harder to defend the Titans. So I tried to counter that as quickly as possible, but I got pincered anyway. This strategy of making a lot of small ships seems really quite viable and quite scary, I'd have to say. The other thing to consider is, even though at the end of the battle I lost 2 Titans, 2 battleships, and a cruiser, they obviously lost 4 Titans, 1 battleship, 5 cruisers, and about 50 or more small craft. But in terms of the ease of them to replace it, replacing the losses, right now at that stage I had a fairly significant production base. I think I probably had about 10 worlds capable of building Titans. But the Meklar have much more territory in this game than I do. They had a lot more colonies, a lot longer and a lot stronger. I was kind of early game cocooned off by myself with unstable hyperspace routes. I rushed the tech to explore them, and then tried to move into the core of the galaxy to found some new worlds. I ended up settling one world, and with my eyes on the other, but the Meklar took it before I could. We had a short war of trying to take it, but I couldn't beat them. They just had too many ships. And I took a couple minor losses, and they took a few losses, but at the end of the day, they got a lot more territory than I did. They wiped out the Klaklon. They were having a constant war with the Dalok Cabal. And then I decided to go to war with those chicken dudes. I can't remember what they're called right now. The bird guys. The feathered guys. My strategy was to just rush the 2 small systems and then take their homeworld, and then they'd settled 5 colonies in a system next to the homeworld, and at this stage I'd taken all 5 of them. I then proceeded to just wipe out or colonize their other, or annex their other territories, which I deemed worthy. Most of them were wiped out because they weren't worth my time. And then I started working on the Meklar. It wasn't the greatest decision to start another war while I still had one ongoing, because it meant that I constantly had to have a few ships back home to make sure that I didn't end up having someone sneaking around bombing my colonies, which meant I couldn't focus my full attention in any one front. The Meklar probably had double the amount of systems that I did as well, and there were a couple choke points basically where the war would be fight. There hasn't really been any action on the Coreward front or the top of the galaxy front. It's been the southern front has had the most fight, which is where this fight took place. So yeah, it was a good fight. It was a lot of fun seeing this much firepower go off. I would say that it was a worthwhile fight because they lost more big ships than I did. but all of those easy ships are probably going to be very quick for them to replace. Those destroyers and frigates are only going to be a handful of turns. Same for the cruisers. The battleships and the Titans, basically a force like that, with the amount of systems and colonies that they have, they would probably be able to replace that entire force within the 25 turns. I can replace my entire force within 25 turns too, but we're both significantly spread out, so amassing them will also take a while. There could probably be another fight on this scale within 30 to 40 turns, but that hasn't happened yet. I just thought I'd highlight this and give a little bit of a commentary about it because I found it interesting. In terms of the fight itself, there's one number I'd like to point out, and that's torpedo accuracy. And also point defense efficiency for that matter. Torpedo accuracy. Mine, 20%. My ships do have a number of torpedoes, but not that many. My battleships are still kind of spec'd to fight small ships. Same with my cruisers. My Titans are an all-rounder. My Doomstar is maybe slightly spec'd on the end of fighting other large ships. The intention is to fight those guys who just teleport in from the pocket dimension. Antarans, yeah. The intent is to fight them in the end, which is what that Doomstar is spec'd for. It's also got a few bombs. My Titans and Doomstars are all bombers. Nothing else. None of the other ships carry bombs. But they had a lot of small ships, and I would assume that a significant number of those ships, definitely the cruisers, maybe the destroyers, possibly even the frigates, carried torpedoes. Now, that meant that my point defense was overwhelmed. Point defense efficiency, 12%. That's really low. There's just 2%. That's even worse, but I have a lot of missiles, because missiles are really great at taking out small ships. But torpedoes are really great at taking out large ships, and they certainly used that. Torpedo accuracy, 92%. I was not stopping them at all. That really hurt, as you saw how quickly I lost those battleships and those Titans. Yeah, those small ships with torpedoes, that really hurts. Definitely a good fight. I'm going to have to put more point defense on these things in the future if I'm going to continue fighting like this. And this definitely shows how destroyers and frigates are definitely not pointless late game. If it came down to... Well, I've still spec mostly into bigger ships because they're easier to not lose them at all. But the small ships, you can probably sustain negligible losses in a fight like this. Whereas the larger ships, that loss is something you feel a little bit more on your production. Because you can have smaller systems, smaller colonies with less production capacity replace those losses, rather than needing colonies with a star base or anything like that, and significant capacity to rebuild a Titan. Like, my fastest systems are replacing Titans in maybe 12 to 19 turns. But building them anywhere else is out of the window because it just takes too long, there's no point. Whereas building 5 frigates still probably wouldn't take 10 turns, or 5 destroyers. They would be very quick to build, very quick to replace. So it's interesting to see if during the next stages of the campaign against the Meklar, I've already won the game at this point, I'm just going to kill everyone as well, just to practice, and it's fun too. But it would be interesting to see if we have another fight on this scale, and if they can replace these forces, and if they choose to deploy them like that. At the stage I am now, probably 50-60 turns after this, I would say I have 2 other fleets of a comparable strength to this one, without the Doomstars obviously, because you can only have 1, and also another fleet which I'm beginning to assemble to onslaught the core, the top part of the galaxy, which isn't at the strength yet, but so far I've got 2 Titans built for it. So it'll be interesting to see what the rest of this game has in terms of the fight between a very large but very spread out, a lot of colonies but not very well developed, versus a smaller number, although getting quite large now, of well-developed colonies, and whether or not I can keep my war machine running better than he can keep his. Thanks for watching.